Topo Studios has been impressing collectors with their high quality and well-priced 6-scale clothing suits. But how does their latest product, the Dark Knight Rises Bruce Wayne TP022 suit, compare to their previous clothing sets? In this video, I'm going to take a closer look at this suit and compare it to the Kento Studio version which was released last year. I'll give you a look at both suits, highlight their pros and cons, and also show you how they scale to Hot Toys figures from the Dark Knight Trilogy line. Before we get started with each of these clothing sets, you will need to supply your own head sculpt. You might be surprised to see that I'm using the older DX12 and Armory Bruce Wayne sculpts in this video. There's a reason for that, and I'll explain as we go because it's one of my big bugbears with this Topo set. So let's start off with looking at the suit details. Here we have both figures standing side by side. Kento is on the right, Topo on the left. Straight off the bat, we can see there are some obvious differences between the two suits. One of the biggest differences is the shirt. Kento went with a white shirt and Topo has gone with a more accurate light pink colour. The tailoring of the Kento shirt has always been an issue for me. I've never liked the way the collar sits, you can't get it sitting underneath the jacket, and there's always an uneven amount of cuff showing beneath the sleeve. No matter how much I've tried to adjust this, I always end up with this uneven look. The tailoring of the Topo shirt is much better. The shirt collar can sit underneath the jacket and there is more length to the sleeves, so you can better adjust the shirt cuffs if you want them to be visible. As for the suit material, there is a slight difference in fabric, with Topo opting to use a slightly darker grey. The Topo fabric also has a sheen to it. I can only judge the fabric of the actual suit based on photos I've seen online, and I think Kento may have a slight edge with their fabric choice. Both suits are tailored well, but I think Kento also has an edge when it comes to the stitching detail on the suit. The stitching isn't at all noticeable on the Kento suit, but there are areas of the Topo suit where the stitching feels more pronounced than it should be. This is really noticeable on the top of the shoulders and the front and back of the jacket. I'm happy to report that both suits use real buttons, so you can recreate the look from the movie where Bruce has the top button done up when wearing this suit. The pattern on the tie is more detailed on the Topo suit. I don't have a strong opinion on the tie because in some photos I saw the pattern looked more pronounced than it did in others. When it comes to the shoes, there's quite a bit of difference to the finish of the paint application. The Topo shoes are much more glossy and you can see more detail sculpted into them, particularly around the toe. The Kento shoes on the other hand, while they still have some nice details, the paint application is much more of a flat black matte. When it comes to the body proportions, we can see a noticeable difference in size. The Topo body is a lot taller and broader than what Kento has used. Aside from the arms being a little bit squeaky, I have to say that my Kento body has been good in hand and held up quite well during the last year. With the Topo body, there's something odd going on with this ankle connection, which makes it feel very loose. When you roll up the pant leg, you can see the peg doesn't fully connect into the body, and I think this is causing some stability issues because the figure feels very hard to balance. Topo has included magnets on the bottom of the shoes, but honestly, given how bad the ankle connection is, I wouldn't feel confident using them. I don't trust that these ankles are strong enough to support the weight of a figure. It's interesting to note that Topo has added some padding to the body. I really noticed this around the calves and the shoulders. I've heard people in the past criticise Topo bodies as having very skinny legs, so I guess this is their listening to and acknowledging that feedback. I'm not sure if this is just an issue with my figure, but getting it to stand and look balanced seems like a challenge. I've never really had this issue with a Topo body before. If you've seen any of my previous Topo reviews, I've always been a bit critical of the hands they use. While the hands that come with this suit do look quite different, they still are a bit too shiny for me. For some reason, one of the hands has this sculpted, unpainted ring on it, which is quite random. The selection of hands that comes with the Topo suit feels like they were perhaps recycled from another project, such as this pointing hand, and these other hands that look like they're meant to hold weapons. None of these seem to go with the suited Bruce Wayne figure, in my opinion. Okay, so that's enough about hands. Let's talk about head sculpt compatibility for a minute. As I mentioned, for this video, I'm using the older DX12 and Armory head sculpts. The reason for this is because they're the only ones that worked with the Topo suit without any modification needed. My intent was to show both suits with the Hot Toys DX19 head sculpt. With the Kento body, that was no problem. You just connect the sculpt directly and it works well. With the Topo suit, it's not so simple. Connecting the sculpt directly to the body means the figure has no neck. When I used the neck connector Topo previously recommended for their Dark Knight Bruce Wayne suit, I ended up with this giraffe neck. I contacted Topo for help, and unlike my previous contact with them, they weren't that helpful. They just told me to use a shorter neck connector, but wouldn't recommend a specific one to use, or said to just use some hose. So to get the DX19 sculpt to work, I had to remove the neck connector and use some plastic tubing that I got from the hardware store to connect the head to the body. While you can get this to look good aesthetically, I have to be honest and say it's not a very secure connection. As a result, it takes more time than it should to get the head in the right position and limits posing. Why Topo's chosen to use a body that isn't compatible with one of the latest Hot Toys Bruce Wayne head sculpts is beyond me. In Topo's promo photos for this suit, they're using a custom YK sculpt, which, from what I understand, costs $2,000 US. This sculpt is great for promo photos and probably helped increase their sales, but honestly, it isn't helpful to collectors who are highly unlikely to be buying a head sculpt in this price range. The reality is the majority of collectors will be using Hot Toys sculpts with these bodies, so I really hope that in the future Topo ensures their bodies are compatible with newer Hot Toys head sculpts, and that their promo images also show us how the bodies work with these sculpts. If there's particular neck connectors or other parts that are needed to make them work, then provide them to us in the box. We shouldn't have to then go buy extra parts or do all this mucking around that I've had to get a Hot Toys sculpt to work with your clothing set. That's my head sculpt rant over. Let's take a look at how these scale with Hot Toys figures from the Dark Knight Trilogy line. First up, we've got the Topo and Kento suits with the Hot Toys Alfred Pennyworth. Michael Caine is 5 centimeters taller than Christian Bale, which is around a 2-inch height difference. So if accuracy is important to you, this is something to consider when picking up one of these suits, as the scaling isn't quite right with the Hot Toys Alfred and the Topo Bruce Wayne. That said, if you will be displaying Bruce with newer Hot Toys figures, like the Two-Face 2.0, the Topo suit will scale a lot better with these newer figures that are using bigger bodies. I've been a big fan of Topo. This is the 6th product of theirs that I've purchased, but I have to be honest in saying this one feels like a step down in their usual quality. The amount of work needed to make the DX19 head sculpt work and the overall quality of this body are just 2 issues that I can't ignore. The Kento suit isn't perfect. It would definitely benefit from a new shirt, but that's a much smaller issue to deal with than what I've been experiencing with the Topo suit. I'm surprising myself by saying this, but I do think I have to give the edge in this comparison to Kento. I'm not sure how readily available this suit still is to buy. At the time, it retailed for about $130 US. The Topo suit at the time of recording was still available on the 16kit website and retailed for $132 US. To sum up my view on the Topo TP022, while I really like the design of this suit, I think it falls down in execution. If you're looking for a Bruce Wayne suit and want to go with the Topo option, the TP13 Dark Knight suit is a much better option in my opinion. At the time of recording, the TP13 was still available to buy from 16kit for $138 US. I've put the link to my review of the TP13 down in the description if you want to take a closer look at this suit. If you've bought the TP022, please let me know if you're having the same issues with the body and compatibility to the DX19 head sculpt. I'm really keen to know if these are just issues I'm experiencing with my copy or if other collectors are having these problems.